Hi, my name's Sean, and in today's video on touring tyres, I want to just take you through some of my experience with the Schwalbe Marathons that come with my Vivente Gib. These tyres, as I say, were stock standard on the Vivente, and I've done about 6,500 kilometres on the bike. What I'll do is I'll show you that the tyre that was on the rear, which I've subsequently transferred to the front, is quite worn, and after 6,500 kilometres it's ready for a change. However, the rear tyre is still got a bit of tread on it, a bit of life left in it, and what I'll do is I have another push bike that has the Schwalbe Marathons, and I'll use that as a spare for that tyre, for that bike, and I'll replace the Marathons with another Schwalbe tyre called the Mondial Evolution DD. So as I say, I've done about 6,500 kilometres on the marathons, and recently I've done a 1,300 kilometre trip from my hometown of Brisbane down to Australia's capital city, which is Canberra, and that was a bit over 1,300 kilometres, and that was the only time that I got punctures in this on this bike. So and those punctures, there were 3 of them. 2 of them were caused by very, very fine wire that comes out of the belting of steel belting of truck tyres and potentially all vehicle tyres. But I know that the detritus beside the road predominantly was shredded truck tyres. So I got 2 punctures, a front and a rear puncture out of those wire beads, and then the third puncture that I got was again on the rear tyre, and that was a pinch puncture, what I believe is a pinch puncture from hitting a sharp edge, because I also busted a spoke potentially at that same time. So yeah, what I'll do is I'll fit the new Schwalbe Mondial. I pretty much came to the conclusion that I wanted a thicker tyre. These are 700 by 35C, whereas the Mondial are 28 by 2.0. So back in the imperial system with the Mondials, the weight of just the marathons, I think they're around the 500 grams, whereas the Mondials are actually a bit over 800 grams, so quite a lot of more tyre. What I'm looking for is obviously new and thicker tread, because these are worn down, and I'm looking for the convenience of reduced numbers of punches. It is an event when you do have a puncture out and you're touring between towns. I had 2 spare tubes, and I ended up patching the first tube once I had that puncture, and but the patch was a brand called Scabs, and they're self-adhesive patches, and I don't think it worked very well. So when I had the second puncture, I transferred the tube that I thought I'd patched to the tyre, and pumped it up, and within 7-10 minutes later it was back being flat. I was very fortunate in that situation that I was only about 20 minutes out of away from a shopping centre, and it was predominantly downhill. So the tube that had the scab puncture correction patch, I transferred back to the bike, and it had a relatively slow leak, but then it would get to a certain pressure and hold that pressure. So what I was able to do, it was a rear puncture at that stage, So the tyre wouldn't hold the high pressure, but it would hold the low pressure. So I actually leaned forward and put most of my body weight over the front handlebars and reduced the amount of weight that was sitting on the back tyre. And that enabled me to roll along with a pretty flat, 3/4 flat tyre, but get to a shopping centre where I could purchase some new tubes. And that's how I got out of that particular situation. However, if I was 80 kilometres, 50 kilometres from the nearest source of new tubes, then what I would have had to have done is spend more time on the side of the road patching the tube before selling on my way. Anywho, what I'll do at the moment is I will pull off these tyres and I will replace them with the Mondials, and I'll show you what they look like on the bike. I'll take some footage now of the 35Cs on the bike so you can see how it fits with the mudguards and the forks of the bike. But then, these Mondials are quite a deal thicker in width, so I'll also take a bit of footage of that on the bike and talk a little bit more about the Mondials when they're on the bike. This is one of the issues that I had expected. The width of the Mondial is creating an issue with the mudguards, so I'll have to do a little bit of modifications of the mudguards so that I can get the Mondials to fit. By loosening the stay and moving the nut and stem as far as I can along the stem or wire, I was able to make a whole lot of space at the back here. However, there's no space at the top of the mudguard. So my idea is this is a plastic mudguard. I'm going to heat the mudguard along here and just put a little bit of flex so that rather than curving down towards the tyre, it'll be further flat on top of the tyre, and that would give me the required distance for the tyre to clear the mudguard at this front end. So that worked nicely for the front. It's just a bit tight through where the fork is. So again, I'll heat up the plastic and widen it at the fork so that it's a very shallow curvature as opposed to the current shape of the curve at the moment. That should work. So I've heated the section through the forks there. So the end result is that the wheel quite easily passes through all parts of the mudguard. So that's a bit of a win for the good guys. So the rear modifications went so much simpler. All I need to do was straighten some of the stays for the mudguard and again extend the length of the actual stays by undoing these nuts and sliding it along. And that was pretty much it. The rear tyre goes in very easy. There's a fair bit of gap in there, so I don't think I'll have too much problem when we come across muddy situations, but we'll see how we go with that. So this is the tread pattern of the Mondials, and quite aggressive and thick. So looking forward to trialling these. So I've successfully swapped the existing Schwalbe Marathons over to the Marathon Mondials, and as you can see, there's a fair bit of extra tyre and tread in the actual Mondials. So late next week I'll give these a bit of a test in a off-road and road trip that I'm doing with gravel roads and bitumen roads, and I'll be able to test that. I do believe that because of the width of the tyres, I potentially will get a bit of issues if the tyres collect too much mud, if it's a muddy road. What I'll also potentially get is, because of the width of the tyres and the width of the mud guards, there is the opportunity for some water and mud to flick up past the actual mud guards in those sort of situations. But they look like great tyres, so I'm really looking forward to many happy thousands of kilometres with these tyres, and hopefully a very low number of punctures along those thousands of kilometres of journeys. Thanks for listening, and potentially year or so I'll follow this up with a view on how the tread pattern's going, and a longer term view of what do I think of the Mondials. At this stage they look great. Thanks.